Hi everyone, I think I have to start using my piano glasses now. Here's Unit 6 of Grade 1A. Here the students are reviewing what a second and third interval are, and then they learn fourth intervals. So for interval of a second, I call it just a hopping second. And you notice I have the students move from side to side with the same fingers, just to get them out of middle C position. And then determine thirds. So students have to think about the different articulations, and they also have to write down the finger that starts that line. Now, an interval of a fourth. To teach intervallic reading correctly, we always have to say what each note is on. So this particular note is a line note, and then it goes to a space note, and there are two skipped in between. Put a little X on the two notes that are skipped. The next example is a space note to a line note with two skipped in between. And soon, when we do this on the whiteboard, when we use our flashcard friend with our students, when we use a theory and activity book, the Christmas book, the note speller is another great supplementary material for learning how to read. Then the students will automatically know exactly what a fourth interval looks like, and they don't have to count any lines or spaces, and they certainly don't have to learn every good boy does fine, because that doesn't work. So here's surprising fourths. On the left hand. Right, and check. Every finger should rest on a key. Okay, now let's turn to page 28. Parade March. Oh, I found this classical piece in an old classical method, and it's by Joseph Kufner. All right, here we have Opus 168, number 60, circle and block all the fourths in this piece. There are so many fourth intervals. More fourths. Well, that's a fifth. Haha, so they can't circle that one. But there are fourths that are coming up in measure 9, and then in measure 13, and then again at measure 17, and measure 18, measure 20. There are fourths all over this piece. So, for the woodpecker touch release, remember that for the approach to the key, the wrist and the forearm goes down at the same time, and then for the release of the key, the wrist and the forearm come up at the same time. Exciting, that fabulous parade march. And if you do get the digital downloads through SuperScore, oh, those orchestrations are fantastic. Unit 6, page 30, Evening Mist. That beautiful original is by Timothy Brown. Obviously, I was playing the teacher part with the student part. We ask our students to point to the notes and count out loud, and then circle the fourths and then play them. So such great review of fourth intervals already in this method. At the end, the students can certainly experiment with a beautiful tissue box touch release, and we can do the exact same thing in our parts as well. On page 31 of Unit 6, students are learning the interval of a fifth. And always the best way to learn intervallic reading, and I have to say I was a product of the music tree piano method, and one of my great mentors at Northwestern University was Elvina Truman Pierce, who worked with Louise Goss and Francis Clark for many years. So this is exactly how you teach intervallic reading. the student has to remember what each interval looks like. So for a fifth, it's a space note with 3 notes skipped in between. And those are the little X's that we have our students put in between fifth intervals. Or it's a line note to a line note with 3 skipped in between as well. So in that way, using Flashcard Friend, using the Note Speller, which is a great supplementary series, using the Theory and Activity book, my goodness, so many ways for students to really learn what all those intervals look like. So here's Not So Brave. Well, the end is a great place for a nice drip drop roll, isn't it? This particular piece was written by Mary Leaf, and it says boldly as the tempo. So now let's take a look at page 32. Here the students are learning the next touch release. Here we have the drip drop roll motion, the tissue box, the woodpecker, and now we have the push off touch release. And we want our students to imagine a kangaroo who's kicking off the ground with its hind legs. And of course the kangaroo is going to go forward, right? And you'll notice when a student is asked to do this, the upper arm, which is the free arm, is the driving force in that motion. So the upper arm must move and must feel that energy going forward. So as you notice while I'm doing this, my wrist and my forearm are moving forward. Right? So if a student is limp and they're trying to play the ends of a phrase like that with a staccato, limp, ugly, boring, 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 ugly, 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 ugly. So in order to get students to have that sense of artistic personality, we want those staccato notes at the end of slurs to just zing with brilliance. So watch me when I play again. Did you see that push off? My upper arm is forcing my wrist and my forearm to go forward. And a really big push off at the end. Okay, so I know that that might be something that you haven't addressed before in your teaching, but if you start to teach these push-offs, so at the end of the slurs there's a staccato note, you are going to have some brilliant players in your studio. So now let's take a look at page 33, a German folk song, and for every staccato note below, use another push-off touch release. So here we go. Teachers that for the push-off touch release, the student pushes forward and off the key, wrist first. Their arms will follow through with a fluid, coordinated motion. And the free, strong arm is what gives the student the energy to create that wonderful, crispy sound. And we also want to make sure our students play with strong fingers. Okay, so now the next piece is Canoe on the Lake. I was inspired to write this when I was on a vacation in Nova Scotia. Look who's on the lake, quietly going by, Native Americans in a canoe, making not a sound. One more look, they're gone. At the very end of that piece, I actually made the D in the right hand. This piece is in D minor. A really nice tied note. It sounds even better like that. At the bottom of the page, Mozart says, be sure your hands don't look like these hands. We don't want starfish hands. We don't want flyaway fingers with wrists that are too low, right, so that all the fingers are like this, or any curly fifth fingers, right? We don't want to have that curly fifth finger. Again, that's for when we keep telling our students to curve their fingers or play on their fingertips. We don't want that locked kind of feeling. So now we're ready for Unit 7. But you know what, before we get into Unit 7, I want to share with you, in the theory book, on page 15 are some examples of good ear training. We have the musicality girl up at the top of the page, and parrot play, as you know, for succeeding at the piano are always two parrots, and they always give each other melodic patterns to listen to and play back. There's a time to compose activity. Make up a piece using the A above treble G and the treble staff. Use seconds and thirds and choose one of these students to write about. So is the student confident? Is she crying? Or is she happy? Right? So we always want our students to think about the mood of their pieces. And then follow the leader is any ear training activity that has to do with rhythm. So there are two sisters right there. And these patterns, there's a 1A and a 1B. You go ahead and tap out either one of those patterns, and you have your student tap it back to you, and then they circle the pattern that they hear. And then on page, page 18 in the recital book for Unit 6, I have to play Giants Jumping for you because it's one of my students' favorite pieces. So the practice step is play each line slowly at least 3 times, right? So repetition is the mother of success, but correct repetitions is what we are after as teachers. So the words are giants jumping off the ground. What a crashing, smashing sound. They are jumping all around. Giants jumping off the ground. Oh no, they are running. Sounds like thunder crashing down. Giants jumping off the ground. What a crashing, smashing sound. Ha! Great teacher duet part. You can definitely see this in the teaching videos of succeeding at the piano on the FJH website. Here's the student part. And you notice at the end, what touch release did I use? I used a terrific push-off, right? If it were going to be a drip drop roll, it would be more gentle. If it were a tissue box, even more quiet. If it were a, what's the next one? A woodpecker touch release, it'd be just a little bit too locked, right? Too dead. But the push-off touch release brings the sound into the air and really makes it nice and short and crispy. All right, so now we're ready for Unit 7.